Dom Harvey, welcome to Between Two Beers.
Did I pop it too early?
No, not at all.
It's great to be here. I'm a big fan of you guys and what you're doing with your podcast. I'm not a big fan of beer, though, I have to say.
Neither am I.
I'm a wine guy.
Well, you could have been drinking wine, Dom, but Dom's been here for about 5 minutes in the ACC studios and he's managed to smash a bottle. What's happened?
It was not a bad one either. It was a Huntaway, a $19 bottle. It wasn't,
no.
It wasn't bottom shelf.
It's not every day you meet your heroes, and Dom's obviously clearly flustered.
You know, the bag just fell off the chair. The studio stinks of wine now, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Sorry, Mike Lane and the lads will clean that up in the morning. You don't have to worry about that.
But as I was saying before, massive fan of what you guys are doing in the podcast space. I think, I'm sure you'll get into this, and I'll let you take control of your own podcast in a second.
Thank you, Dom.
But like the last 6 months or so, maybe 9 months, when I decided to do my own podcast, I've been listening to a lot and sort of listening to it from an analytical point of view, and you guys are superb what you're doing. It's fantastic. You should be immensely proud.
Oh, thanks, Dom. It's awesome to hear. It's a journey that we're on. We're not quite sure where it's going to go, but we are quite excited about the momentum it's building.
Yeah.
And we want to talk about your podcast. It's kind of like an away game for you, isn't it? Visiting a rival studio.
Yeah, seeing how the pros do it.
Yeah.
There's lights and cameras and everything.
Yeah.
But I remember when I saw you, Dom Harvey announcing he was getting into the podcast space, and it looked similar to what we were doing, and I was very eager and excited to listen. And I've listened to a bunch of episodes, and what you're doing is really good. And I would encourage our audience, after they have listened to all 83 Between Two Beers episodes,
you can
go over and listen to Dom.
skip the first 10 you guys did with no-name soccer players. Sorry, football.
Sorry, Aaron Scott.
You've had some crackers. Jeremy Wells, Brodie Kane, the recent one with Eric Murray, was you have that ability to get into some really raw, real, genuine conversations and ask the big questions, which is a skill. And so, how are you finding the journey yourself?
I'm loving it. I'm still in the early stages, and I know I've got a lot to learn. With my broadcasting sensibilities from being in radio, I got pretty good at doing like the 5-minute radio interview, where you're in, you're out, short questions, hopefully short answers, cover a lot of ground, get a few laughs, and then you're done. But you're only ever scratching the surface. These long-form conversations are easier in a lot of ways and harder in a lot of ways. And I really like the slowed-down pace of it. And I'm loving it. And something, actually, Steve, you and I had a coffee a few weeks ago and we talked about this. Something that happened to me with Eric Murray, which never happened in all my years in radio, is the day after he sent me a text and was like, hey, I really enjoyed that. Let's do that again sometime without the microphones. So you really have the opportunity to connect with people that you just don't do with a radio interview.
Yeah, it's different, isn't it? And I find it really interesting with you, 30 years in the industry, 20 years at the edge, and you're essentially learning a new skill set because it's so different to the little grabs that you did at breakfast radio, right?
Yeah, and it's different sort of objectives. Like I don't have to be a piece of shit. I am a piece of shit, but
people can change. People can change.
Someone on the show had to be the guy that would ask the question that everyone's thinking or whatever. But I don't have to. I can be more authentic in the podcast space. Like I don't have to go for that cheap laugh or that low-hanging fruit.
Yeah, they come naturally, right?
Yeah.
You find the time to come out. But what are your goals in this? How much of your time are you dedicating to the podcast at the moment?
More than what I thought, to be honest. It's quite time-consuming, but I want to do it well, and that's the thing. Like if you want to do anything well, like it takes time. But it's been going 3 months now. You mentioned a couple of the people I've had on before. There's Jimmy Neesham as well, and a couple. And I always said at the beginning, okay, I'm going to look at it at 3 months, work out which guests are being listened to most and which aren't, and then I'll just cut out the ones that aren't. But some of the least listened to ones are just fabulous conversations. Like I had Arch Jelly on a couple of weeks ago, who's 99 fucking years old. Yeah. He was John Walker's coach for his entire career, and he's 99, still walks 3Ks a day, and it's a fascinating guy. And it's like, I'm enjoying it, so I'm going to keep doing guests like that, things that spin my wheels a bit.
Has anything surprised you about the podcasting process? I mean, did you know much about podcast apart from researching what we were doing before you got into it?
I knew absolutely nothing. Like I thought one of my old producers at work, a guy called Carl Thompson, who does his own podcast called Married, Divorced and Dating. He just gave me a list of gear that I needed to buy and put me onto this podcast hosting site, but I knew nothing. Like I'm technically inept.
How scared of dead air were you when you started coming from a commercial radio background? Like a silence in a conversation, did you feel like you had to fill that space?
Oh, that's a good. I never really thought about that. Yeah, you know what? After 30 years, that's probably something I still have. I haven't really thought about it. But yeah, any sort of silence for more than a. Yeah, actually, I'm going to be more mindful of that in the future.
Yeah.
That wasn't a critique. That was a genuine question.
No. That's interesting. It's probably just something I do as a force
I think
of habit.
I think everybody does it.
Yeah.
Naturally, is that kind of that fear of just sitting there in the moment. Stephen always says to me, "I'm just going to let that sit with you." Whenever he raises something controversial.
Do I? Sometimes. I don't think I've ever seen that.
Is that your catchphrase?
All right, anyway, the way we do things at Between Two Beers, we tell the audience how we know the guests. So, Shay, how do you know Dom Harvey?
Well, growing up in Hamilton in the 90s, The Edge was the radio station of choice. But in researching...
Well, I started there in 2001, so fuck you.
Oh, okay. All right, well, there you go. Well, then you'd shifted up to Auckland by that stage as well, right?
2000. No, so I was at the station in Palmerston North, which was called 2XS, which is now one of the More FM stations. And I started at the Edge 2001, and we were in Hamilton for most of that year, and then we moved up to Auckland. It's a bit of a yarn about how that came about. So the station I was at, 2XS, was a Radio Works station, now Media Works, and so was the Edge. And Stephen Joyce, he was like the boss. Me and JJ had been seeing each other for a couple of years, and I was a big deal in Palmerston North.
Yeah. Massive.
I could park in a paraplegic spot outside the mall and I wouldn't get towed. And JJ was doing really well at the Edge, so she was like, I want Dom to come up here and work. Like, we can't keep doing long distance. And Stephen Joyce was like, no, I'm not fucking up that show and I'm not fucking up this show. So as you were. And then we got offered a job at ZM working together, and the Edge just matched it, and that's when I started working.
Well, I guess that's how synonymous you are with The Edge, that I've confused my timelines. But in terms of researching the pod, I actually found a lesser-known connection, which is Manihira Forbes. So...
Oh, shit!
I've got a loose connection with Mani through a friend of mine, and he's the father...
Ka'iulani. Yeah,
that's
Ka'iulani's
right. And for those that don't know... you ran 5 marathons in 5 days to help raise funds for some life-saving treatment for her.
Yeah, they needed cancer treatment from Barcelona. Yeah, they're such a good family.
And have I got it right that you've kind of been on record as saying that's one of the most rewarding things that you've done?
100%. Yeah, 1,000%. Best thing I've ever done in my life. It's so good. It's the only time... they're Waikato-based, and that was day 4. So that was like Thursday, 4 marathons in a row, only 1 to go. So at that point, I'd finished it. I was... completely fucked, but I knew I was going to get through Friday as well. And they organised like one of the local high schools to come down and give me a haka. I've never had a haka in my life. Can't imagine I'll ever get one again either. But it was just, I don't know how I managed to hold back the tears. I think if it was now, I probably wouldn't even try and hold back the tears. I'd just let them flow. But the people I met that week, and the money that was raised, and the donations, and doing it for this incredible family that had mortgaged their house as many times as what they could and have put everything on the line for their daughter. It was incredible.
It was really remarkable just reading like what you did and achieved and helped fundraise for. Did you get a lot of that when you were at your prime? Like people suggesting that you help fundraise for their cause, and how did you choose that one to put all that effort into?
I don't know. Dina, who was our promotions manager at the time, she just said, hey, there's this girl, it's a really good thing, and we should look at doing something. So I don't know how she sort of like why that stood out. But yeah, you do get sort of like charity fatigue. It's so hard. Like even on a personal basis, like I'll get maybe 5 a week on Instagram, people saying, oh, can you share this? And it's like, well, I can share it for you, but it's like no one's going to engage or anything. Like people just get that sort of fatigue. But yeah, the Forbes, I don't know why they sort of stood out. I think it's just because I don't know we saw a documentary that they did. Like after Dina said, "Oh, this family is really good. We should do something for them." We found a documentary that they'd done on Sunday or something like that, and these parents just looked fucked. Like they looked exhausted. They were drawn, and it's like they'd just been through the ringer for their poor little daughter. Yeah.
Well, it was a hugely admirable thing to do. And I think one of the other things in researching that that resonates with me, particularly in your later work, is some of your self-professed failings, I guess. Your your thoughts around self-sabotage, imposter syndrome. That stuff resonates with me massively.
Oh, really?
Massively.
Yeah.
And I watched...
I wonder if that's a Kiwi thing that we all sort of have to some degree.
Possibly. I watched when you were speaking about some of these things on air, and Clint and Meg almost bigging you up. And I've been in that same position with Stephen, with other friends of mine as well, where you've got this kind of almost crippling feeling about yourself, but the people around you just can't see it, and they're trying to big you up. And it's common ground that I really want to explore, like having the opportunity to sit here and eyeball you and talk about it. I just wonder if you could spend a couple of moments kind of expanding on your struggles or where you're at now around some of that challenging stuff.
Oh, absolutely. I'm a mess, and I went to an all-boys school in Palmerston North where you wouldn't show any sort of weakness or vulnerability, because if you did, it'd be weaponized and used against you. So I had these massive walls up. I was quite staunch, and I think I carried that through my 20s and probably 30s a bit as well. And then you go through some stuff that you should deal with at the time, which I probably didn't, like the fertility stuff and years of IVF. I don't think I shed one tear. Like we got to the point where we were in the very early stages of pregnancy after the embryo had been put back in, and we lost babies, and it's like I don't think I even cried through any of that. And then you look back and you go, fuck, that was some big shit we dealt with, and I didn't even address it. And then it's like, I like to use the analogy, it's like getting your gym clothes and sticking it in a bag and then putting it in the boot of your car. You got to sort that out, or else it's only going to get worse. So I've done a lot of sort of self-analysis the last, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 years, and I reckon I've got nothing was ever diagnosed when I was a kid in the 1970s, but I reckon I've got ADHD. Yeah. I'm definitely on the spectrum somewhere. I don't know. And the imposter syndrome thing, I don't know. You just it's a bad thing, but in some ways I wonder if it's a good thing as well, and that it just drives you to work harder.
How do you feel putting that sort of stuff out in the open now? Because I know for me personally, sitting across from your mates and having that kind of conversation, it can be really challenging and really confronting. But I felt great afterwards. Was it the same for you?
Yeah, it's like a huge weight off your shoulders. Yeah, talking about this sort of stuff, I find it really cathartic now. I'm all about it. I ended up going to therapy a few years ago, and I was shit scared about that, but it's great. It's like what you guys are doing with me now, but this guy charged me $250 an hour. This is free, and I get beer.
With the imposter syndrome stuff, you were the biggest name in radio. You had an audience of 600,000 people, and you were smashing it year after year after year. Was there a point as that bubble is growing and growing that you're getting reinforced that actually I am pretty good at this? Does that imposter thing shy away?
I don't know. I suppose there's spikes or peaks or moments where you think that, you make the finals for the radio awards, and you're like, okay, cool, I'm the man. And then you win an award, and it's like, yeah, I'm the man. And then that feeling will last for a few days, and then it'll disappear, or the ratings will come out. The ratings will be good, and you'll feel validated for a time. But then slowly it sort of erodes away, and then you go back to this sort of thing. But it just forced me to work bloody hard. That's all, which is not always healthy, I guess. But I don't know. Yeah, it just sort of lingered there. I've had the same thing again this year with starting a podcast. It's like, is it going to be complete shit? I wish I was one of those people that could just back yourself, have that just unwavering self-confidence or belief. But I don't know. I think in some ways, though, if I may give myself a pat on the back, I have got better over the last few years at talking about things and verbalising it rather than just bottling it up and keeping it to myself.
Well, I've definitely seen that, and I think if I can speak about myself for a little bit, I feel like I'm kind of in the same boat. I had massive avoidance kind of issues. I found personally kicking booze has been a great way for me to kind of to deal with some of these things, to talk about some of these things. Having the podcast has been fantastic as well. So long may it continue.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I probably need to ease up on the booze as well. I do worry about my relationship with alcohol and how healthy it is.
Yeah, and I'm certainly not going to preach from the pulpit around what works for me will work for other people, but I just found, and I take my between two beers hat off to the fella sitting over there. He just had a pretty candid conversation with me after we recorded one of these episodes, and I thought, fuck, he's right, actually. I'm going to kick that. But look, hey, we've done about 20 minutes of kind of early heavy-duty stuff. Stephen's connection to Dom is maybe a little bit lighter than mine.
So I used to deliver the New Zealand Herald when I was 14, 15, 16, 2000, 2001, 2002. I would pick it up from in town in Hamilton, and I'd have my little Walkman 97.8 every morning. And it wasn't the coolest thing to be listening to The Edge as a 15, 16-year-old
Was
boy
it
in
not?
Hamilton.
I reckon
it was
it was.
more.
I reckon it
it
was.
was the rock. You listened to the rock.
Right,
You were a bit of
right.
a. I was in a bit of a bogan crowd. But holy shit, man, you and JJ and Mike, the captivating combo, you kept drawing me back in. Like, you had that magic. It was like you were a big part of my formative years, which is why I was so excited to have you on, because I've listened to you so much over the years. So, yeah, loving all that.
By the way, can I just say, so how old are you now?
37.
37. So this was like 20 odd years ago. So I'm pleased that you've got like warm memories of that, but I'm also pleased that none of that audio exists online, because I'm trying to think of the content we would have been doing at that time when you were a paper delivery boy with your Walkman, and a lot of it would have been very, very distasteful.
Yeah, it was a
I'm
different
It was a
time.
different moment in time.
Yeah.
That's like, it's almost encapsulated in that moment. I think for people of our age, yeah, you look back at it now and you go, oh, yeah, that wasn't great. At the time, that's what it was. It was.
It was great radio. It was the biggest show in town, right? It was sort of based, perhaps, your shtick on Howard Stern, shock jock type style.
Completely. I idolise Howard Stern.
There you go.
And I don't know how closely you've... A lot of your listeners probably wouldn't even know who he is. He's like... in recent years, he's been like a judge on America's Got Talent and stuff, but he's like the original sort of shock jock, and he used to do some filthy content. In recent years, he's become... his original fan base, they accuse him of selling out, but he does amazing celebrity interviews now. He does on radio what is basically like what you guys do on podcast. Does like long form, in-depth interviews with, Ben Affleck, Dave Grohl, whoever.
Yeah. But you talk about sort of the content you were putting out there, but you were aiming that at like 18 to 24-year-olds, right? That was the Edge's target demographic. Yes. So you were trying to create stuff that appealed to that audience, which is not stuff that you would like now. You'd look back on that and cringe, but that audience at that time loved it. So,
Yeah.
Two strangers in a wedding.
Two strangers in a wedding,
yes. That was groundbreaking. Like the Edge back then, we had a promotions manager called Daryl Payton, R.I.P., and he won the radio award for like best radio station promotion for something like 8 years in a row. We were just doing innovative stuff. Like we just got told that there was nothing that you couldn't do, and we sort of believed it. And the Two Strangers in a Wedding thing. I mean, now there's like Married at First Sight on every fucking night of the week, but this was controversial at the time. Like there was some guy on Paul Holmes' TV show like trying to get the Edge switched off because he thought it was unchristian and stuff. Now it's just no big deal, but back then it was huge.
Yeah, Zane and
Paula. Yeah,
they're 3 kids, right?
Like still
going
together.
strong.
They're the most wonderful couple as well. They're beautiful couple, beautiful family.
So it is the forerunner to Married at First Sight and all these shows that we see now, right? So the premise was literally 2 strangers. What was the
Meeting
vetting
for the first
process?
time
Yeah,
at
to get them together.
wedding.
Was it you and JJ?
Oh, JJ. I'll tell you the difference between because we've done that thing like the marrying strangers 4 times, I think, and all couples are together. One of them shouldn't be together, but that's another. But 3 of them very happily together, and it's always been successful, and that's completely down to JJ. Like JJ would meet the families, and the families would usually be apprehensive. Like you'd get a mum that's crying because this is not how she saw her son getting married or whatever, and JJ would say, "Listen, I promise you, I'm going to do everything I can to find like a wife for your son," and should take it seriously. So Married at First Sight, it's like if you go on there and say, "Oh, I really like blonde girls that are shorter than me," they'll be like, "Right, get him a tall brunette." They're about entertainment. But JJ like legitimately like wore her heart on her sleeve and really wanted it to work.
I love, by the way, if those 3 couples are listening that aren't Paula and Zane, they're looking at each other right now going, is Dom talking about us?
No. It's the couple involved, if they hear that, they probably won't hear this, but they'll know it's about them. It's the couple where after one of his infidelity incidents, she wrote and self-published a book, including all the text messages that she found on his phone.
Oh, jeez.
How do you bounce back from that?
Yeah.
I didn't know Johnny Depp and Amber Heard listened to The Edge.
Right. Okay. So for those who don't know who Dom is, I'm just going to read a few things that I've read that sort of describe you quite well, I thought. So when you hung up the mic a year ago, Tim Murphy of the newsroom wrote this. He said, Dom's verbal capacity to jog blindly through broadcasting standards minefields, his offhand comments about others, his oversharing from his personal life, and his ability to make listeners smile, wince, and gasp simultaneously have been legend. Harvey's unlikely to have a radio award named after him, like the industry's late great joker and prankster Kevin Black, but his stint on The Edge's flagship spans an entire generation, and the on-air achievement is indisputable. And I thought that was really, really strong. And then I've heard that your ex-wife JJ described you as a sensitive soul who used radio persona to mask that sensitivity by mocking, taking the mickey, and joking to divert any praise or sentiment that came his way. Which, again, I found quite insightful. Yeah. And I want to sort of set the scene to build up to that was you as you left. But I want to go back to the start of the journey to 14-year-old Dom, who made the decision that he wanted a career as a radio broadcaster. And he went on to achieve it. But what was 14-year-old Dom like? I imagine you were a bit of a rascal.
No, not really. Like as I said before, I went to an all-boys school, and I wasn't good at cricket, so I tapped out of all team sport by that age because you just get sick of being let down and having everyone just call you a fucking faggot, you dropped the ball again. So I tapped out of all sport, and I just sort of kept to myself. Like, when you're at an all-boys school, you just don't want to stick your head above the crowd. So I wasn't particularly a smart ass or anything like that. I think I was probably quite introverted, really. But we had a school trip, like when I was about 12, I guess, to a radio station, and the dude that was on air at the time, he was smoking a dowry and he had jandals on and shorts. And my perception of work up until that point was seeing my dad like wearing a suit every morning and grizzling that he had to work. And I thought, this looks like a fun fucking job. And I made the decision then that that's what I wanted to do.
Did you do school productions or other bits and pieces to hone that craft? Or you've just
no, it wasn't theatrical or any sort of talent.
No school radio?
Oh, Palmerston North in the 80s. What do you think?
No, take that back. All I've got is, for some reason, I've just flashed into my head. There was a show on Saturday mornings called Kids Songs. I don't know if anyone, I've gone down a real rabbit hole here, but I'm going to finish it, Steph. I know you're looking at me like that.
Go ahead, bro.
It was some kids who found an abandoned radio station, get onto YouTube, and I hate myself for starting the story. Actually,
you've got to finish it now.
You got to commit.
They found an abandoned radio station, they cleaned it up, and they started playing kids songs. And I can still remember John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. His name is my name too. Whenever I go out, the people always shout, there goes John Jacob Jingleheimer Schmidt. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. On YouTube. I'm going to put a link in the show notes.
Nicely said, my friend.
Killed myself there.
Okay, so link us up. So 17-year-old, you start working at Palmerston North in the radio station. When do you realise you've got a bit of a knack and a bit of a talent for it?
Well, yes, I did in my what was then the sixth form year. There was like a work experience thing. So Mr. Layton, the guidance counsellor and careers advisor, he organised for me to go into the station that I later worked at, 2XS, for every Thursday I'd get the day off school and I'd get to go in there. And I just loved hanging around there. And I was just like filing records and I don't know, just doing shit jobs, whatever needed to be done. But I just loved the environment and I loved being around there. And then after like 18 months, I guess, of doing that, the guy this was before automation, so there was like a live midnight to 6 a.m. announcer.
Wow.
And the station manager, Steve Roy, had been out at a function and he came back in to drop his car keys off, whatever. And the midnight to 6 guy, his legs were like dangling out of the ceiling at reception because he was breaking into the prize cupboard, which was behind a locked door. so he was fired. And then, I don't know, I suppose because I'd been around and they trusted me, they sort of gave me a chance. And I was fucking shit. And it was devastating because it was like, this is the thing I'd wanted to do for so many years. And I had this opportunity and I just always imagined I'd be good at it. And I was terrible. I was talking like the way I thought a radio announcer would speak. And it was just awful.
Is that self-critique though? Or did you get some
external feedback? No, I can be, I think I'm reasonable. I know I've got imposter syndrome and stuff, but I think I'm reasonably good at being, I achieved some stuff, but I was fucking shit then. And I think the only reason they kept me is because it was midnight to 6 in Palmerston North. How many people listening? 8? Like, realistically. And they were paying me $12,000 a year. This was 1990, so you might go, well, that's probably a lot of money. It wasn't a lot. It was like $190 a week after tax, but I didn't care. I loved it. But then the saving grace for me, because I think I would have been just another one of those casualties that the industry chews up and spits out. I would have got disillusioned. There were other people that were getting promotions ahead of me, like to the night show or the day show or whatever. So there I was, like stuck on midnight to 6 a.m. in Palmerston North. But I had a really good relationship with the breakfast announcer, Mike West, who's actually still there now. He's like the king of Palmerston North Radio. And so I became like a character on his show, and ended up being really successful, and I sort of found my niche in that, really. So it wasn't being like a straight announcer. It was just like being basically being his sort of bitch. So I was like a producer, and we had a really good relationship. We had a massive show for a number of years, and he was absolutely instrumental in, like he was like another father figure, and I just wanted to please him so badly. I never wanted to let him down. So when he was on holiday and he was just hanging around at home, I'd take things, mail that arrived at work, I'd take it around to his house, and yeah. I was just in awe of him, and he was so good to me.
Was that Baldrick?
Yeah. So the Rowan Atkinson show Blackadder was on TV at the time, and Baldrick was like the slave, and I was like the slave of the radio station. So one of the sales reps called me Baldrick, and it sort of stuck. Yeah. And now if I go to Palmerston North now, like say if I'm there for the Boxing Day races or something, at a certain point in the afternoon, there will be people of a certain age that will yell it out. yeah. Baldy!
I had to explain to Stephen who Baldrick was on the drive up. Yeah. No idea about Blackadder.
No.
Showing his age.
So you obviously did get better, and I guess your reputation started building. And then what? Did you get headhunted by The Edge? Like, how did the move to Hamilton?
Well, yeah, JJ sort of made that happen. So it's like JJ and I started seeing each other, and we was going long distance for like 2 years. So I'd go up to Hamilton every other weekend. She'd go down to Palmerston every other weekend. And it got to the point we had a great relationship. It was so good, and we were just like, what's the point? Like, there's no future. We can't, So she said to Stephen Joyce, can you get a Dom a job up here because we really want to be together? Or can I go and get a job in Palmerston North? And he was like, no, that means I'll have to blow up one of these shows, and they're both successful shows. So then...
is this Stephen Joyce, dildo in the face, Stephen Joyce?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, the Minister of everything from the National Party.
I just wanted to make sure that I had that right.
So he set up a radio company called Radio Works, which was then later bought out by someone else or whatever, and he was sort of forced to sell and made $6 million out of it. But it was his radio company. Hardest man ever to negotiate with. Like, here he was, CEO of his own company, and he was driving around like a Nissan Primera or something. Tightest man ever. That's why when he became Minister of Finance, I thought, he's good. He's not going to waste a cent. So then we got a job offer from this company here. It's called NZME now. It was called something else at the time, TRN, I think. And they offered JJ a job at the Edge, and they're like, who do you want to work with? And she said, I really want to work with Dom. That was going to be for the ZM breakfast show. So then when Stephen Joyce got word of that, he was like, we'll match whatever they're offering, and we'll do whatever. And then the rudest thing ever, I still remember this to this day. So as we were signing the contract, he looked us in the eye and goes, I want you guys to know, I think you'll be worth this amount of money one day, but you're definitely not worth this amount of money now.
Wow.
And it's like, well, fuck you. Like, we've been schmoozed by the other company who've told us we're really good, removed my imposter syndrome for a couple of months of whining and dining, and now you're just,
So they didn't give you the number that was really good?
He matched it, but not a cent more.
Right.
But it's one of those things, better the devil you know, I guess.
And that relationship, was that known in the industry, or was it not?
What relationship
with JJ?
Yeah.
Okay, so it was open that you two were together and you were going to be hosting this new show. Okay.
And it was just you two?
No, it's us two and a guy called Jason Reeves, who's now does the breakfast show on Coast.
Yeah. So how did it go? So the first year, you move, you make this big call, everyone's put all their eggs in this basket. Did you hit the ground running? Like, was it smooth from the get-go?
I think so. Yeah, it was a big learning for me. Like, I wasn't I wasn't Baldrick or Baldy anymore. I was Dom. So that was a big learning. And we just tried really hard. But you used to listen on your Walkman. We used to do some quite good stuff. We tried to be innovative and stuff. At the time, Polly and Grant were on ZM, and they were doing like were they on ZM? I think they may have been on ZM. I might have this wrong. I think they were on ZM Wellington. It may have been like Marcus Slush or someone doing Breakfast on the Edge. I thought what we were doing was far better than that, but I don't know. The ratings didn't always agree with my opinion.
How early into this partnership did you have to start to put down some sort of boundaries with the work-life balance? You're living with someone, you're in a relationship with them, you're working with them. That's a lot of time to be spending with one person. Did you have ways of dealing with that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wish you put that question to me 20 years ago. Yeah. I was terrible at that. work was so important. We even said at the beginning when we started working together, we're like, okay, if the relationship doesn't work, we've got to be professional because the jobs are really important. And I probably didn't do enough to enforce a separation, a separation between work and home life. So it's one of those ones when we'd do a show together in the morning, then we'd go home, we'd had a desk set up, sort of like what we're sitting on here, where JJ's on one side, I'm on the other. So you're talking shop all day. And then at night time, you see something on TV, and like on Dancing with the Stars, whatever, you're like, oh shit, we should get that person on tomorrow morning. So without knowing about it, without sort of consciously thinking about it, you're constantly in a state of like a work meeting. Which was I think I definitely played a part in the demise of the relationship ultimately, I think.
Yeah, I imagine that would be exhausting. It would become subconsciously exhausting. It would just be all encompassing of everything.
But that's on me. That's on me, that one.
But at the same time, it did work for a long. Well, it certainly worked from the radio front for a long time. Did you become a power couple? Like, was there a lot about you two in the media in those early years? Like, how did the Dom and JJ brand like snowball?
Oh, that was JJ pretty much, and I just sort of like rode her coattails really. Like, she was really good at I don't know, like getting in the women's magazines and stuff like that. It sort of sits more comfortably with her than with me, I guess, to a degree. But I suppose so. Like, we were reasonably well known. That's why since then I've had a couple of relationships and I've sort of kept them fairly quiet. And it's just nice having something that you can keep to yourself, I think, in a way. I don't know, when you're on the radio, and it's like, when you're on the radio, you do have to share a lot about yourself to form that connection with people. You just do. But the more of yourself you give away, once you've given it away, you can't take it back.
I could imagine it'd be draining, right? Like, did you feel like you had to always be on when you're out in public, like that persona almost? You put your mask on, you go to work, you're this person, and then when you're sitting having a coffee, do people expect you to be the same that they hear on the radio? Yeah,
I never really have struggled with that. I'm always, even to this day, like incredibly flattered if someone comes up, because it's like, if someone is prepared to come up and talk to you, it's like they've made a connection with your personality, and I think that's incredibly humbling. And also, like my shtick on the edge, it was kind of I was kind of a douchebag, I was a bit of an asshole or whatever. So if people come up, I never felt the need to be like that to them. If anything, I'm just like super super nice. I think there's sort of two people in radio. There's a lot of like people on the radio that have a nice guy persona, and then you meet them and it's like, wow, that guy's a real fucking dick. Yeah. I'd like to think I'm the opposite, where people always say to me, it's like, oh, you're not as much of an asshole as what you seem on the radio. And to me, it's a huge compliment.
I want to ask about the strategy of your interviews, and I watched a clip which is of you, JJ, and Mike talking to One Direction in 2013. They were very fresh. They'd come to New Zealand for a big tour. And it was like, I think you had like 11 minutes with them or something, and you're around this table and you're kind of like, it's like you and JJ are kind of like the terriers just going in there just trying to get some gold, and Mike's kind of trying to smooth things over. But like, when you have big guests like that, One Direction or Justin Bieber or Ed Sheeran or whoever it is, what's the strategy? Are you thinking, we just need to try to get him to say a couple of controversial little bits that can cut out into like 2-3 minute clips? Or are you thinking of it as a big collective interview? Like, how's it work?
Oh, God. I feel like now we should have had a strategy. I don't know. I think the thing is with those interviews, it's like you're looking for a moment that could potentially go viral, I guess. Because it's like there's no sort of competitive advantage. Like just before we had our 11-minute interview, ZM would have had an 11-minute interview, and before them, More FM would have had an 11-minute interview. So everyone's going to have their One Direction interview playing the next morning, probably at the same time. 8:05 or whatever. So you want a moment that can potentially have another life and go a bit viral, whatever that means. Whatever it meant at the time, I don't know. Maybe it's getting on Daily Telegraph or Daily Mail. Yeah. But yeah, you just want to get that moment. And sometimes that moment would come, and I was like ruthless back then. Like I'd if someone walked out, fucking great.
Yeah.
There's your moment.
Yeah.
But that's a horrible, now that I'm doing the podcasting thing and it's like you can have like respectful chats with people, that's a horrible way to go into a chat, isn't it?
That's what I thought when I
got
watched
10
that.
minutes 10 minutes to make one of these kids walk out.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Is that kind of the approach to it?
Yeah, not always a walkout, but if a walkout happened, I don't know, I suppose, when I was sort of starting out in broadcasting, that's when Paul Holmes started his TV show, and on his very first show, he had Dennis Connor, the America's Cup guy, walk out, and it was it made him. Yeah. So you have a moment like that, which can seem terrible at the time, but and no doubt station management will be scrambling to make good with the record label afterwards, but. When the dust settles, it's like, oh, that's a good fucking moment.
People are talking about Dom Harvey.
Yeah.
I always wondered if those were like the station management coming down and talking. I always wondered if that was a manufactured thing or if it was genuinely, with some of the things that happened, it genuinely happened. Is that?
Yeah. It genuinely happened. But then a lot of that stuff, like, it definitely felt like it was a nudge, wink, wink sort of telling off, because it's like. They'd be like, any publicity is good publicity. The worst thing in the world is being beige. The only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. So they'll be like, oh, yeah, that's terrible what you did. But then, can you keep doing more of that? Because look at the insights on this post.
Yeah. It's riding the line, right? And almost going a little bit over the line and knowing where that barrier is.
And I suppose... if you look at talk radio in New Zealand, like the three most successful hosts I think ever are probably the three H's, like Holmes, Henry, and Hosking. And they've all been polarising in their own sort of different way. So I suppose I tried to do that in a music format a bit. Yeah.
There's been so many stunts and gags and tricks over the years. There was one good story about Tom Cruise.
The More FM one, or again, like we won an award. We won the Blackie Award for this for best radio moment of the year. So, okay.
See, I can see the discomfort in you going there and retelling the story, which is really interesting because I imagine at the time you were right into it.
Yeah. Oh, it was fantastic, but the thing is with like a joke or a stunt or a prank or whatever you want to call it. It's all in how the target receives it, I guess. So years ago when Tom Cruise was in Taranaki filming this movie, The Last Samurai, we did this thing. We put like a $5,000 bounty on his head because he wasn't doing any. He did a press conference when he arrived at the airport and he wasn't doing anything else. So we were like, $5,000 if you can get Tom Cruise to call us during the breakfast show and he speaks to us for 5 minutes. And then it was gathering so much steam with people in like New Plymouth that our boss Leon ended up getting a call from Tom's publicist in LA saying, we really want this to fucking stop. Like it's really disruptive. Can you stop it? And Leon was like, nah. So Tom ended up doing like an interview. So it was all sort of like worked out behind the scenes. They're like, he's doing a night shoot all this week. He'll finish like sometime in the 6 a.m. hour. Then he'll give you a call on, and we gave him the special number, not the 0800 the Edge number. So he called, and it was a great PR exercise. He was like, oh, here you guys have been putting a bounty on my head. And he goes, I'll tell you what, if you raise it to $7,000, I'll match it. And there's a school that I fly over in the helicopter every morning in Uranui. They need a sun shelter. Maybe we can put our money together and buy them a sun shelter. So it was fantastic. And then after that, he ended up flying us down to the set to watch him for a day. And then the day he left, he called us for another chat just to thank everyone in New Zealand. And like no one else had anything with Tom Cruise. And then fast forward, it's probably petty of us, fast forward like 12 or 15 years, Simon Barnett does a thing on the air. Like, we're doing a Tom Cruise bounty. He's filming Mission Impossible. We want to get him on. $5,000. He hadn't even adjusted the money for inflation. So we're like, I know what we can do. Let's make this happen. So we had this producer, Tom McKenzie, who's no longer in radio, and he masterminded the whole thing from the back end. He set up email addresses and went really fucking deep. Found this Tom Cruise impersonator in the States, and it happened. And so it was live on air on More FM. We cut out on our show and we said, okay, we're just letting you guys know what's happening at the moment, blah, 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 blah. So people listening to The Edge were listening in on it from our perspective. People that were listening to More FM thought they were listening to Tom Cruise. And then at the end, when we came in, we're like, psych! We kind of thought they'd be like, saying, Gary, this is, you bastards, right, that's it, we're going to get you guys back. But instead it was just uncomfortable silence. One of their producers started crying. And they just sat on it for a while, and Gary was like, "It's pretty low rent, guys, pretty low rent." And then
On air?
yeah, and they would just say, "Well, that's what that's just really mean. There's nothing worse than being hoodwinked." And it's like it was it got really really awkward. Me and JJ we were still together. We went to Fiji that weekend, and so we were off here the next week, and people were like, "Yeah, they've been suspended." We hadn't been suspended, but it was like, we're getting comments like, "Oh, if I ever see you cunts on the street, I'll king hit you," and things like that. And it's like, Clint, who was on the show at the time, Clint Randall, who's on Dancing with the Stars now, he has a really good perspective of looking at it. He goes, "I don't know why people are so butthurt about this. It's like the grown man thought he was talking to a celebrity and he wasn't."
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, it was like a radio prank. That's what radio was built on. And feels like if you do these things now, you have to do them sort of how, like John and Ben do. They're very respectful, and they'll be like, "Hey, is it okay if we do a prank on you?" And but it's like, takes the fun out of it. It was a really well executed prank. But no way would we have done it if we thought that was going to be the outcome. Like, it was never our intention for anyone to get that hurt or that upset by it.
Was that an outlier in terms of pranks that have had bad reactions, or was there probably too many of those when you look back?
I don't know. I think that was definitely an outlier. Like that was that was terrible. Like by next May when the radio awards were on, when we won the Blackie, like JJ had left the Edge by then and was working at More FM, so she was at their table, and we were kind of hoping by then, a lot of dust had settled, water under the bridge. We'd go up on stage and claim the award. They'd come up as well, but they didn't want anything to do with that award.
Where's the situation now? Are you and Simon Barnett texting each other, or is it still quite?
I think, Randall did a TV show with him, and he said, "Oh, honestly, I don't harbour any bitterness. I've forgiven them," and blah blah blah. So I don't know. Yeah. I'd like to think so, but once you've been through something like that, the relationship's never quite the same again. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Yeah.
What was it like building a new relationship when JJ left and you teamed up with Clint and Megan?
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that quite challenging, forming a new chemistry and finding out where their lines were? And
it's always really difficult. Yeah, because I mean, you want to be able to give each other absolute shit because there's lots of comedy in that, and that's what friends do to each other. But it's finding that line of how far you can go. So it definitely took a while. And one thing which I definitely took for granted with JJ is because of the nature of our relationship, just how far I could push it. So when you're with a new person, you understand. So I think one of the early ones with Meg was she was ill one time, and this is maybe in the first few months she was on the show. And on our Facebook group chat, she was like, "Hey guys, I'm not going to be able to come to work again tomorrow. Like I've literally like shat the bed. I'm not in an Amber Heard way, like it was an accidental." So the next
I think it was the dog. I'm pretty sure it was the dog.
So then the next morning on the air, like Randall would be like, "Oh, it's Dom, Megan, Randall, Meg's not here," and I'll be like, "Yeah, she shat the bed." And she messaged me later that day saying, "Oh, I'm so embarrassed. That was really inappropriate." Blah blah blah. And I was like, "Come on, that's not inappropriate. You sent that on our show group chat. That's got to be fair game." And she owns it now. Like she loves the story now. Yeah. It's known as, if you look up Urban Dictionary, if you look up doing a Meg, it's a thing now. Yeah, the listeners really bought into it. So I think it was just like a learning for her, and it was like definitely a give and take thing for both of us. Like it's like a dance, and you learn how far you can push it.
Yeah.
How do you do that? Do you do that off air? Is it the best way to do it to find out as you're doing the show, or do you show finishes, you go off for a coffee, and then you kind of you know what I mean? Like you're building a friendship, you keep pushing.
So, some of that stuff you find out on the air by accident, but it's probably best if you find out off the air, I think, for harmonious relationships. But yeah, you often have a chat like, what are your no-go subjects? And Clint was always like, I don't have any. There's nothing that's off limits, which is such a refreshing way to go into it. Yeah. Meg had a couple. Did I? I don't know. I'd probably say I don't, but if you ask Meg or Randall, they'll be like, "Oh yeah, he does. He does. He gets really wound up if you say this or do this." Yeah.
We talked at the start. You had an audience. So I think it was 300,000 when you started, 600,000 when you left. How much of a factor? We're sort of talking about this on the drive up. Like our audience is growing, and we haven't yet started to think about how many people are listening when we're saying this stuff. But do you think when it gets that high, are you thinking about how many people you're reaching with each broadcast?
No, because you're legit just in the studio with a couple of your mates, just shooting the shit. And that's it. I think it would be unhealthy to like try and think of the size of the audience, because it would just play in the back of your mind, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
But also, how do they get those figures? Like some mornings at 6 a.m. we'd do like a phone-in topic or whatever, and you get no callers, and you'd be like, you can't tell me there's 500,000 people listening and not one person called.
Yeah.
Whereas with podcasts, you can see the actual figures, and there's no hiding, is there?
No. Were you a guy that sweated over the radio surveys when the numbers come in? Like, do you all get together and judge how well the show has done for that quarter?
100%. Yeah, I wouldn't sleep the night before. I'd be nervous all morning. The ratings would come out at 9. It just ate me up. So I went around to JJ's a couple of weeks ago to drop the dog off because I was going for a run, and I was like, oh, what are you up to today? She's like, oh, the results are coming out soon. And I wasn't even aware of it. And it was so refreshing.
Because how often do they come out? Is it a monthly thing?
Up until about 2 years ago, it was like twice a year, 2 6-week blocks a year.
Right.
So radio stations would be like, give away a CD, give away a CD, give away a CD, then suddenly give away $100,000. Well, no marketing, billboards everywhere. But now it's pretty much rolling, so it's sort of all through the year now. But yeah, one thing I found incredibly frustrating about that is, say you're running and you follow a program, you will get faster or you will be able to run further. If you go to the gym on a regular basis and you lift weights, you will get stronger and you will develop muscles. But there's no sort of formula with radio. Like, you can work really hard and do what you think's a really good show, and it just for whatever reason, whatever various factors, it just may not rate. And there's nothing you can do about it. So I found that incredibly frustrating.
The one thing we've found with the podcasting is the key is just staying consistent. We have taken it a bit more seriously, I guess, this last year and released one every week. And the audience uptake to come along with it has been great. People have made it part of their schedule, part of their routine. Yeah. So just, keep grinding week by week by week.
Yeah, we had like a consultant for a time, and he was like, if you're good enough for long enough, people will start listening.
That's what he said.
Yeah.
He literally said that to me when we started this.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the approach I'm taking with my podcast as well. It's like, I'm not forcing it down people's throats. Like, I had a text a couple of weeks ago from one of my old CEOs, Brent Impey. He's the boss of the rugby union at the moment. And he said, oh, my daughter Tash has been listening to your podcast. She said it's real good. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Have you been listening to it? He's like, no, I haven't yet. I'm real sorry. And I'm like, don't apologise. Like, if it's good enough for long enough, you'll hear about it, and someone will tell you to listen to an episode. But I don't want to ram it down anyone's throat. No. The last thing I want is to go into my friend's place and they're like, oh shit, Dom's coming over. I better listen to part 2 of his Eric Murray chat. He's going to quiz me.
I know exactly what you mean. Like, the amount of people that do, you see them, they go, oh, the podcast is going really well. I'm really sorry I haven't listened to it. It's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's going to be there forever. You can pick it up when you want to.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about it as well, the permanence of it. Because it's like, 30 years of breakfast radio and 2 different stations, and people may not necessarily, like you listened on your Walkman doing the paper run, you may not remember specific moments, but you remember how it made you feel. But it seems like with radio, like, you do a voice break, and then once it's through the speakers, it's gone. Yeah, it's gone forever.
When we were still quite of a niche football podcast, I did an episode with my dad, Bruce, and one of my friend's dad, Roger, and we both realised at the time the importance of it. Because they're not going to be around forever. Yeah. You've got 2 hours of exploring their life and hearing all the things that you probably never really asked them before. I thought those were really, really special moments for us. Glad we did it.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm probably the same as you guys. In a lot of ways, I feel more comfortable in front of a microphone than without it. Maybe that's from being institutionalised from doing radio so many years, but I'd feel more comfortable asking someone certain questions in front of a mic than
It gives you permission to talk about things that you wouldn't otherwise. We wouldn't sit around
but it's your dad, so you think those things are far more appropriate to have off mic than on mic, but for some reason, it gives you permission.
The ceremonial aspect of it, he knew in advance that he was coming in and we were going to talk about these things that we wouldn't normally talk about, and he was open to it, so it kind of gives you permission. Yeah, it was a cool experience.
Oh, that's cool. Like, that's one thing the family will treasure forever, right?
I think so. Yeah. Bruce, if you're listening, shout out. It's kind of a nice seg, the stress about the survey into you hanging up the mic. So you left the show after 20 years, and it was a big emotional farewell. And some of the reasons, you talked about your mental health, you talked about perhaps spending more time on yourself. The hours of breakfast radio didn't allow for a very well-rounded life. Are you able to talk to us about the specifics of why you left, what you have done in that time to actually improve those areas, or if you have improved those areas?
Yeah, well, I think you hear about in politics people becoming like lifelong politicians, and I feel like I'd become the same with radio, and I just needed to like take a step back from that and get some perspective, and it's been bloody great. It really has been so good, and that you realise when you're doing a breakfast show, especially on a big station, and you're earning good money, and there's a lot of pressure. You sweat over it. We poured over every break, like every single show. Like we put everything we had into it, and you wanted to be successful and do well. And you'd do a break at 6 o'clock in the morning that didn't go the way you wanted, and then you're probably like a golfer going to the next hole, and you need to put it behind you and move on. And then just having a step back from that over the last like 9 or 10 months, you realise no one gives a shit. Like no one's getting up at 6 a.m. to listen to it. Like you're fitting into so. It's for the first time in my adult life, I've been able to be like an actual radio listener rather than like a radio broadcaster. And you realise just no one cares about ratings. No one cares about the awards or stuff like that. So that's been good. The running, well, every event I've signed up for, I'm moving into ultras now.
Okay.
I want to go. I'm just getting slower, so I just want to go longer. But every event I've signed up for has been
Ultras, for those listening who don't know, is 100k plus.
well, anything over 42Ks.
Okay.
So 42Ks is a marathon. Ultra, shit, like, yeah, you can do 100 miles if you want. You can do stage races that go for a week, and it's like 100Ks a day. It can be anything. So I'm still moving into that area. I love getting on the trails and doing trail runs. Like I did the Rootburn Classic last year, which is like 32Ks. It's just beautiful. And in terms of mindfulness, it's like if you're running around the streets, your mind can wander because it's just a thoughtless process. If you're on the trails, you need to be in the moment. Like you need to like watch where your foot's going to land. 2 paces from here, 3 paces from here. So that's been really good. And just having there's been other things as well. Like just not. I had a coffee date last week with Sharon Casey, who I worked with at the Edge for many years, and she had a premature baby last year, so she's been off here as well. And we were just sharing stories about how nice it is to be able to be in the moment with someone and not be hanging off their every word listening for content.
Yeah.
Like she tells me a funny story about something, and normally I'd be like, I'm just going to put that in the notes section on my phone. We're going to talk about that. That's funny content. You can just be in the moment with someone and not think, how can I turn this into content? So I feel like I've like built up more trust with a lot of my friends as well, where they can tell me stuff and it's like, they don't have to fear that it's going to be, a primetime break the next morning.
Did that take you a while to get to that point?
No, surprisingly not. I did worry about that. I managed to let go very quickly. Yeah.
A couple of other guests that we've had on as well that do breakfast stuff have...
I heard you on with Matt Heath, who's a good mate of mine.
Yeah, they've almost also said like the adjustment from doing breakfast into normal life, like not having to get up early and all that, was almost instant. Like your body goes, no, we're just going to sleep now until 8:30.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's been so good. And for the first time in my life, I haven't been a slave to the alarm. It's like I'm at the time we're recording this, it's 8:07 on a Thursday evening. If I was working, there's no way I'd come in here and do this. I got invited to so many cool things, and in the last 5 years, I was a hermit. I never left the house because I found the routine that worked for me. I had to be in bed by 9 p.m. I could drink 2 glasses of wine on no more than that on a weeknight.
You can just smash bottles now and not worry about it.
Yeah, literally smashing bottles. So it's quite nice. And if the time comes where I really miss and I go back to radio, I think I'll be a better broadcaster in that I'll have like a different perspective and a different take on it. Maybe not stress about it so much.
Yeah.
I look back now and I think I feel like I got better over the final few years, maybe because I just didn't give as much of a fuck. But I would have been horrible to work with for a lot of the people I worked with because I just had this relentless desire to do well. And I'd work myself hard, but I'd expect everyone else around me to work fucking hard as well.
Did you find it hard as you got older trying to be entertaining for that younger demographic? Like the Edge's demographic stayed young, right?
Yeah.
They're still 18, 24.
Yeah.
When you were close to that age yourself, were you more in tune with the youth?
Well, one really good thing about the Edge is like they never asked you to be fake. They wanted you to be authentic, but they were just like, don't celebrate your birthday. Like, don't talk about Dom's birthday on the air. Like, we don't want anyone to know he's 40 fucking 8. Which was fine by me, but I never sort of lied about it or bullshitted it. But you do feel, I don't know, like when you're 47 and you're talking about TikToks and stuff. I don't know. It's just part of the desire just went in the last.
I'm sorry. I'm just laughing at thinking about 37-year-old Stephen talking about TikToks.
I watch a lot of TikTok.
It is really good.
How good is TikTok?
Yeah.
And then trying to relay to like me and a couple of other of our
Guys,
mates.
you've got to get on
Yeah,
TikTok. You don't
it's
know
like
what you're missing
in
out
the
on.
group chat. Like, is this a safe space to share a TikTok? No, it's not. No one gives a shit.
But I think it's one of those jobs. Your heart has to be in it. In the last 5 years, 10 years ago, I was getting up at 4 a.m. I'd do 20 minutes of meditation, have a cold shower, and then crack into it with gusto and enthusiasm. Then the last few years, my alarm was getting later and later. I was rolling in at 5:30. I still had the passion and the want to do well, but I think after doing it for that long, I don't know, part of the drive or desire just goes, I think, just naturally. Yeah.
I'd be keen, Dom, if you're open to it. One of the things you mentioned and perhaps not dealing with at the time was the tumour that you got and how it led into your fertility issues. Are you able to talk about that in as much or as little detail?
Yeah,
as you want?
absolutely. So, for those of you watching this video, I've got this meaty scar there, like a 9 centimetre long scar. So I had this this tumour growing inside me, and it was probably growing for 10 or 15 years, I guess. They reckon it started as like a pea-sized thing. And by the time they got it out, it was like the size of a big grapefruit. It was like a real big ball. It wasn't. It was benign. So it wasn't cancer or anything, but it was just like a ball of adrenaline, just in sort of my abdomen area. So progressively, as it was growing, I was just getting sicker and sicker, and I started running during that time, and I'd go out for a run, and then sometimes I'd just keel over and collapse, and I'd be vomiting on the side of the road, and I put it down to me being older, even though I was, I don't know, in my early 30s at the time. I look back now and I was a fucking idiot. It's like, that's an absurd thing to think. But I thought, oh, well, you haven't done exercise since you left school and, you're an unfit bastard and blah, blah, blah. And they, JJ in the end, she sent me to the doctor who forwarded me onto a cardiologist, and they started doing some tests and they couldn't find it. And through all this, I was training for the Auckland Marathon, and then the marathon day came. I was 4Ks into it. So that's the easiest 4Ks of a 42K run. At 4Ks, you should be feeling amazing because the hard work isn't even beginning to start. And I was feeling like shit. I was having one of these attacks that I had on so many training runs. And just outside Takapuna Grammar, 4Ks into the run, there's a drink station and a St. John's Ambo. So I thought, I'm gonna see if they can take some blood or something. So I went there and they did some blood pressure tests, and it was off the fucking chart. But by the time they did all that, it was like my body had returned to normal again. I was like, sweet, I'll just keep on running, and then I'll get my wife to bring me to the hospital when I'm done. And they're like, oh, no, you're not going anywhere. They lay me down, they put the sirens on, and it felt all very dramatic. And then I was in a hospital, and they did a week of testing and MRIs and all this sort of stuff, and then they found it. It was this big thing that was sort of hidden. So they got it taken out, and then it was an absolute game changer. I became a different person. I was just so much calmer over it, because this thing, every time I was in a stress situation, it would just flood my body with adrenaline. So if I was waiting at a traffic light with an indicator on and someone behind me tooted, suddenly I'd be almost immediately drenched in sweat, and I'd be shaking. And I just thought this was normal because it had sort of happened over a number of years. Then as soon as this thing was taken out, I was just super, super chill, almost zen-like. Yeah. But that started the fertility journey for me and JJ. So the surgeon that took it out, and what he described, I never felt like my life was in jeopardy, but he described it as a life-saving operation. He knows more than me, I guess, but he came in to see me as I was recovering, and he goes, oh, hey, you might have a thing called retrograde ejaculate, where when you have sex and you have an orgasm, nothing comes out. It just goes into your bladder. But he goes, but fertility treatment, the way it is, it's real easy to harvest the sperm and then, blah, blah, blah. And I realise now, he was a surgeon, he knew fuck all about fertility. And he knew what we knew about fertility, which is what you read on the cover of People magazine, that, oh, yeah, Cher's 87 and she's having a baby, or someone else is having triplets. So we thought that was going to be easy, and it started like a journey that went for the best part of a decade, and it was it's it's JJ went through a lot. Like it was male fertility. It was a problem on my end, but she went through like so much. Like she had to do all the hard work. Yeah, it was, and I, as I said before, like I didn't really address it at the time. It's like you get 2 rounds of government funding, so you do 1 round, failed. It's like, all right, next, let's book it in, let's do it next, and you're just constantly looking forward. And I look back now, and it's like, fuck, we went through some shit. We went through a lot of shit, and I just didn't address it at the time. And it makes me so proud of her, like what she went through, and she never even really wanted to have kids. She could have like taken it or left it, but she did it for me, and it's humbling when you look back.
You almost became the unofficial ambassador for male fertility, right? Like it's probably a title you didn't want to have.
Yeah.
But you had to adopt it. Was that something that came up in public and interactions with other men that were maybe going through that struggle, or other couples that were going through that struggle?
Yeah, it did. So you'd be at a concert or whatever, and some guy would come up and start talking to you, and you're like, I can't hear you. So then come right up to you and do that thing, and it's like, can you send me an email? We'll talk about this another time. But I was always happy to chat about it. Like I didn't mind that. And we did a story with Sunday, and they treated it real delicately. And then JJ even wrote a book about it called Misconception, which she still gets, like, women in particular messaging her saying, oh, thanks, we were going through this and we didn't really know how to navigate the journey, and the book was really helpful. So I mean, I didn't mind sharing that. I've still got no shame really when it comes to...
Yeah, wanting to have kids and picturing a life with kids in it, and then not being prevented from doing that is a totally different world. Like, it's a totally different life. Like, have you made peace with that?
I don't know. Not fully, I don't think. Yeah, not fully. I don't know. I feel like since I finished doing morning radio, like I think I'm definitely working through it. But when like that job was so full on, and we were just doing round after round of IVF, and I never sort of like properly like took a moment to breathe and pause and deal with it. And that's that's what I'm doing at the moment.
That's awesome that you are, because I turned 40 last week. Similar but different journey. I kind of envisaged I would have kids in my life, and I don't, through no real circumstance other than having not found the right person. I was really lucky, and I am still lucky to have a stepdaughter in my life, Paris, who listens to the podcast, so shout out to Paris.
And so she says.
And that's been great. But yeah, it's an interesting thing as you get older to look around your peers and your friends, and you see that they've got these things which maybe you thought you would have, and then you don't. And making sense of that journey is a challenging thing for dudes, for women as well. I'm sure it is, but I can only speak from my kind of perspective. Yeah. So I think the more kind of conversations like this, as challenging and difficult as they are, it gives other dudes in the same position kind of strength to talk about it and to address it, rather than bottling it up and letting it get to a place where it is unhealthy. Yeah,
I mean, I can't be too sad about it. I have a fabulous life. Like, I have a really, really wonderful life, and I can do whatever I want without worrying about being selfish. I can be as selfish as what I want. But you just see the second half, I guess, of your life working out a certain way, and having kids and potentially grandkids or whatever, and then suddenly that's not there anymore. It's like, okay, I need to like reset, and the second half of my life is going to look very different. One thing for me, there's a couple that are reasonably well. I hope I'm okay talking about them. I'm sure they won't mind. Jay Reeve and his wife Anna Reeve. Jay does the afternoon show on The Rock, and Anna's like an influencer and stuff. So me and JJ were at the end of our sort of IVF journey. Like, we were just about to tap out. So we were just like broke, and then we saw them at the fertility clinic, and that was their first day. So they were starting the journey, and we were ending it. And then they ended up having twin boys, and so now whenever I see them in real life or on Instagram, it's like, okay, yeah, it's like, it's like if we were successful, that would have been,
Yeah. The cute
So-
kids. So I've seen those twins. Yeah.
they're great parents, they're a great family.
Yeah.
So I'm pleased it worked for them. And a lot of people have that success. They give you stats and stuff when you get fertility treatment. It's like 33% chance or whatever, but I don't know. It just didn't work out for us, and we tried everything. And it's like a little part of you dies every time in a way.
Yeah.
And then in the end, like we, God, I can't even, maybe 6 or 7 rounds of IVF, and then one of my great mates who's got kids of his own didn't want any more. He kindly offered to be a donor for us, which was amazing. He's not the sort of guy that would ever see a therapist or anything, but he had to go to 2 sessions of counselling before he did it, where they ask him all sorts of uncomfortable questions. So that was a massive thing, huge honour. So we tried a couple of rounds with his sperm, which the clinic described as super sperm. It was like the highest whatever rate that they'd ever seen, but it just didn't work. And by then we were just sort of exhausted and broken. And Dr. Richard Fisher, he's like New Zealand's IVF sort of fertility expert. He was like, couples that come in, it's like they're a statue, and with each round of IVF, a little part of the statue breaks off. I thought it was a reasonable sort of analogy, because it does feel kind of like that.
Yeah.
But it's been good to like think about and process it now.
Yeah.
But I do it from a place of gratitude. It just makes me upset thinking about what JJ went through.
These conversations are so different to what you had for 20 years, right? I know you did talk about it from time to time.
But it just wasn't really a space to talk about it. You know what I mean? It's not people are like, for fuck's sake, I listen to this to get a laugh in the morning. Like, fuck.
But life's not all laughs, and you know what I mean?
No.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
and that's the thing with morning radio. It's like it's a trade-off. Like, you need to give some of yourself away for the audience to sort of form a connection and feel like they know you. But then, not everyone wants that. Some people just, shut up and play the fucking new Beatles song.
But the other thing about it is that you don't know in terms of who's listening. It's the same with the podcast platform. You don't know what situation someone that's listening to this is in at that moment in time. And I guess it makes it important that your interactions with people or the things that you say sometimes come from that place of care and love. And I just want to acknowledge, if you're watching this, you can maybe see that Dom's visibly, it's challenging to talk about.
Yeah.
So I do want to pass my acknowledgement and my strength to you to have the courage to have these conversations when they are uncomfortable. I think it's an awesome thing.
Oh, thanks, man. I'll tell you what, like from 20 to maybe 35, 40, maybe I cried twice. I don't know. I think I cried at my nana's funeral, But now I can just think about stuff that I've been through, and I can cry at the drop of a hat. And I won't try and suppress happy tears either. Like, I think it's a good emotion to have.
Those palmy schoolboys will be so disappointed.
Yeah. Oh no, like showing some sort of like vulnerability. I think it's a real powerful thing. So maybe I've watched too many Brene Brown documentaries on Netflix. I don't know.
Maybe we should all watch more.
Yeah.
So nearly a year on since you left to focus on these things. How are you tracking well? Are you happy now? How are things?
There's aspects of it I miss, but probably not as much as what I thought after that long. You know what I mean? I'm really happy with what I'm doing. Like with the podcast, I feel really good. Like it's nice. Like I had a chat with an 88-year-old guy the other day. This guy Barry McGee, who won a bronze medal at the Rome Olympic Marathon in 1960, training partner of like Peter Snell and Sir Murray Halberg, and it's like I'll put that chat up. I know it's not going to get as many listens as Brody Kane or Jeremy Wells, but it's like I'm doing some stuff for me.
Yep.
And in radio, like heaps of my radio friends were like, "Ooh," when I told them about the podcast, they're like, "Oh, why are you calling it Runners Only? It just seems too niche." And I'm like, I just want to do what I want to do. Like, not everything is about. I don't know. I find myself getting really analytical about things. It's like, how can you make this more successful? And every now and then I have to pull myself back and go, no, just remember why you're doing this. It's a passion project.
I love that you started a podcast to talk about running, because for 20 years on air, you weren't really able to talk about that part of your life.
No one gives a shit.
But it's a great hook. I think it's a really clever hook.
Well,
because you get these guests on to talk about their running, but really it's about more than that, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a small part of the podcast.
Well, everyone's got some connection to running, even if it's a loathing of it based on their experience with the school cross country. It's
this guy.
Yeah. So it's not about that. That's why Clint Randall said to me the other week, he goes, "Oh, bro, your podcast is so good, but when I try and tell people to listen to it, they're like, oh, I'm not a runner." So,
Yeah.
but it's like I kind of like that if it's like a hidden secret sort of thing, or don't judge a book by its cover sort of situation.
Yeah.
But I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really just at the moment where I am in my life, it sits more comfortably with who I am, having these conversations with people, similar to, I guess, like to the conversation you guys are having with me now and what you guys do.
So let's talk a little bit about running. We've
Yeah.
gotten through a fair chunk without mentioning it. You've done a marathon sub 3 hours, which is
Yeah.
insane.
Yeah.
Stevie loves a challenge too, so
Oh yeah. I read a thing you did online and with your journalist hat on. Do you tried the Kipchoge thing?
challenge.
Yeah.
1 kilometre in
2:57?
2:52,
2:52.
which was
You didn't do it,
insanely
right?
fast.
What time did you do?
I did it. 2:52.
You did not
I did.
on a treadmill though. Must
On
have
a
been on a
track.
treadmill. Track.
I was there.
You did a sub 3 minute.
I'll send you the video. I'll send you the video after the episode.
I've never broken 3 minutes for a kilometre.
It's insanely fast. So one
Hey
of the
man,
things
you
we
keep
did,
going. You never know. You might get there.
We went to
Hang on, 3:05.
we went to the YMCA gym and we set the treadmills to the fastest speed they go, which is like 20 kilometres an hour, and got all the punters from the gym to run and see how long they last, and I'd bow out after 200 metres, 300 metres, 400 metres. Like, no, he ran faster than that for 42 kilometres. Like, it's insane. So yeah, this intense training regime, and then did it at Porritt Stadium. Shay was in the crowd. It was the hardest thing I've done. Like, it was 2 minutes 50 of absolute horror and pain, but yeah, pretty proud of it.
All consuming as well in the lead up to it. Like all consuming. Christmas Day.
Yeah. We trained hard for it.
Shit.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm in awe. That is flying.
Yeah, it's
That
fast.
is insanely quick. Yeah, and to think Kipchoge does it,
I know.
over
Yeah.
and over again, 42 times. He's just an incredible talent.
That was the punchline at the end of the video. He's like, Steve did 1 kilometre in 2 minutes 52 seconds. He's got 41 kilometres to go.
Oh yeah, no, don't downplay that though. Like a sub 3 minute kilometre is phenomenal. That's
Yeah,
ridiculously quick.
But your marathon, and
Yeah.
under 3, that was your best time, right? Sub 3
Yeah, it was-
hour marathon.
It was a goal I had for years to break 3 hours. It's sort of like I don't know. I suppose every runner's Everest. It's like an achievable goal, but it's bloody hard and it requires a lot of work. So I ended up doing years and years of training, and I ended up doing a 2 hour 57 marathon in Tokyo, which works out to be like 4 minute 10-second kilometre pace for 3 hours, which is bloody quick. Like it's insanely quick.
What does that feel like to achieve that goal after so many years of trying to get there? Because I can imagine.
So satisfying.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
like-
every marathon must be satisfying to finish, but when you've sub 3, is it?
Oh, I think because it's a goal, and I was working towards it for years, and there was so much self doubt, and the imposter syndrome thing, and then I had a real hot crack at it at the Berlin Marathon, which is where all the world records are set. I thought if I can do it anywhere, it'll be Berlin, and crapped out and did like a 3:06, which is still a bloody fast.
I love
yeah.
that. Yeah,
Cracked
cracked
out
out.
for
Yeah,
3:06,
but it's still like 6 minutes is a long way off your target time. So yeah, when I did it, I was like just so immensely proud. And I when the dust settled on that, I sort of looked at it and I thought I could probably go faster. Like I could probably do, I don't know, like 2:56, 2:55, 2:54. But I thought, would the training involved bring me enough satisfaction? And the answer ultimately was no. Like it was a lot of work. So I think that's it. I'm one and done.
Yeah. Now just focusing on ultras. Like, how does that come about? You feel like you've clocked the marathon circuit. You need a harder challenge.
Well, 49 now, so I'm not going to get any faster. So yeah, there's just some amazing ultra events out there, and people I've met in the ultra community are just so cool and crazy. So yeah, I think that'll be the next thing.
Have you done Old Ghost?
Oh, funny you should say that. I've been signed up to Old Ghost for the last 2 fucking years. So I've got a deferred entry for next year. Yeah. The first year. What happened the first year? I think lockdown cancelled it. Second year, it was Aucklanders weren't allowed because we were
Was
in
it like the night before it got canned or
yeah,
something?
like
I think.
I had all my gear set out. I had all the essential gear all lined up to go, and then just couldn't go. But I really want to do that desperately.
Yeah, one of my colleagues had been training for that for a long time, like a year, and then I think it got cancelled like 2 nights before it was
Yeah.
meant to start. He was
Well,
so gutted.
I'm not going to lie. Like there's some Aucklanders that were like, hey, we were going to do Old Ghost as well. Bunch of us are going to go and do this trail, and we're going to do the same distance. Do you want to come and do 89k? And I'm like, nah, No, I mean, it would have been great. I didn't want to do like 89K just anywhere. I wanted to do the Old Ghost Road because it's like such an epic story about how that road came about. And, you know, I'd be happy to do an 89K run, but I'm also happy to not do an 89K run. Yeah.
We'll take Shay down there one day. What, you got some bits left, Shay? What you got?
I'm really interested back on the podcast situation, like about how is there a return to radio from podcast now that you're in the long form? Do you think you can go back to the ad breaks and the shorter time span?
I did it for 30 years. I definitely can. It would have to be something that I'm into though, like, you know, something that I feel passionate about and good about. One thing I found, so JJ worked at the Edge for about the same length of time as what I did, and she, I've never seen her happier than what she is now working in the afternoons. Yeah. So, breakfast radio, I don't know. I don't know if I could do that again. Maybe, never say never. But yeah, there's aspects of radio, and especially being on a good team, that I do miss. That's a camaraderie. But yeah, I don't know.
It is.
I don't know. I really love what I'm doing now. Like, you guys must feel the same way. It's like, you know, you can have the space to have meaningful conversations with people.
Yeah. And
it's really, really cool.
It is really rewarding, and you build, especially when you do it in person. We did it through video for about a year because we were locked out of Auckland. And you have good conversations, but you don't have that same connection. Like you talked about talking to Eric Murray, coming over to your place, having a few beers. It's probably a lifelong friendship that gets built there. Yeah. Same with you, you know, through this podcast, we've struck up a friendship and you make connections.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same. Yeah, I find most people that ask me to go on their podcast, they just want to do it on Zoom. They're like, oh, I've got this Riverside app, we just do it. Yeah. It's like, you don't get the same, I don't know, you just don't get the same chemistry, you don't get the same body language, you just don't get, it's not this. I mean, in saying that though, like you guys did a fantastic job with Chris Cairns.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, and that was remotely done, but I feel like you just get a better read on a person in person.
Definitely, yeah. The cues, when to talk, when Shay's going to come in. Like now.
No, I was deliberately doing one of those silences.
Good comedic timing. Oh, dead air. Shut.
No, don't fill it. Don't fill it.
No. I think that just means I normally look at Shay when we get towards the end because he's normally got a few bits and pieces. But
my bits and pieces are all ticked off.
You guys, I need to commend you for your preparation. Like, being from like a radio background, I've always been like a hell prepper as well. But yeah, you guys are organised.
Yeah.
You guys are running an efficient ship.
Yeah.
I don't know about that.
You sort of fine-tune it over time, you know.
Yeah, and I can't thank you enough, Steve. Actually, not just you, there's other podcasters as well. I've found it's just a really good community. Like, no one's like, you know, if you ask someone that's running a podcast for some tips or advice or whatever, no one's like, fuck off, mate. Yeah. Fuck off, mate, you're going to steal my listeners. Yeah. You know, it's everyone's been really good and really supportive, and I'm loving it. I'm loving learning.
It's still so new and fresh, really, in New Zealand, isn't it? The whole podcast scene is kind of in its infancy. So yeah, it'd be cool if a bunch of us can come up together.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Some people say to me, if I'm like, oh, do you listen to podcasts? They'll be like, nah, I'm not really into podcasts. It's like, whatever you are into, there's a podcast.
100%. The other one is I don't have time. It's like, of course you have time. There's so much dead time that you're wasting doing other things. You can listen to something.
Yeah, I've had that about people go, oh, yeah, I was going to listen to your podcast, but I saw it was an hour, and it's like, oh, not today. I'm like, it's background noise.
Yeah, I tell you what, anyone that's still listening to this, an hour, 30 minutes in, they've found the time. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, thanks so much, Tom. That's been great.
Thank
you for being open and honest and telling us all about your story, the good times and the bad times. Yeah. It's been so cool. Shay, got an outro lined up for us?
Yeah, look, again, Stevie loves teaming up with these outros. I do want to take time to kind of acknowledge the importance of the topics you talk about. They are big deals in a lot of people's lives, and the more people, particularly people with prominence and platforms that are able to speak about them, I think the more they'll just normalize and they'll become, we won't have to struggle, we won't have to feel like we've got nowhere to turn to. So I encourage you to keep doing what you're doing, and I guess for us to keep doing what we're doing as well, and hopefully we can all come up together like Steve said.
I appreciate that. I've had a surprising number of comments from people about my podcast saying, oh, it's so good that you're talking about mental health, and that seems outrageous to me. Like, Kerwin was doing that shit 20 years ago. Now, that was brave and courageous then, but...
I just want to jump in there. The Eric Murray chat, talking about Olivia Podmore and suicide and some really delicate topics.
Yeah.
You guys both handled that exceptionally well, and it was such raw, real conversations with no filters, which you don't really get anywhere else, which is what the podcast media... I'd recommend anyone go and listen to that episode.
Yeah, I love that about Eric. He calls a spade and says exactly what he thinks. It was... He's a tough cookie. Like he was the last person to see her alive, and one of the first people to find her afterwards. It's like, how do you go through that and not end up somehow fucked up? But he's not at all, and he just manages to box it, process it, and move on. It's yeah.
As a host, do you get nervous leading up to that kind of line of questioning? You know what I mean? Like when we've had people in here and we're getting ready to get to a certain point of it, do you agonize over how you're going to approach it?
That one, not so much, because it seemed like a natural transition. Like he talked about his coach Dick Tonks and just how hard he drove everyone, how he was a bully. So then it sort of segged nicely into Olivia Podmore and high performance sport and that pressure. But there are others. Like I had a chat with Joseph Parker last week, and I wanted to bring up the name suppression thing that he had last year, where he was involved in some money laundering or drug ring thing. And I was shitting myself getting into that. We were having such a nice conversation, but it's sort of like the elephant in the room. But I just gave him the opportunity to speak about it and say what he wanted, and he was fine with it. He sent me a text the next day saying, thanks for the chat. Roger Tuivasa-Sheck lives over the road. Do you want me to see if he can come on?
Hey, hang on, Dom. Don't go snatching up all these best guests in Auckland. Eh? Just slow down, buddy.
But it doesn't have to be on a podcast, right? It can be a conversation with a friend to eventually talk about that elephant in the room or that situation. So you don't have to always put a microphone in front of someone to get them to talk about something that might not be comfortable, but it does help.
Yeah, but also I feel like in the podcast space, it's like you don't have to go all Jack Tame on them. Like it's not a... I didn't have to ask Joseph Parker like follow-up questions. It's like, well, what about this? And what about this? And, it's like, hey, this happened. What do you want to say about it? And, I don't know. I'm really enjoying it, though. I find people are so open and generous with their time as well. Yeah.
It's great, Dom. Runners only. Check it out. And thanks so much. It's been awesome.
Thanks so much, guys. Love your work.
Cheers, Dom.